Well, good morning and welcome to another episode of the NLP Talks podcast. I am, of course, Laura Evans, your host for the podcast. And if you're watching this video, you are watching the live recording of the next episode, which is episode 2 of series 7. I can't believe I'm saying that, given this podcast was only supposed to ever have one series, and here I am doing series 7. So if you are watching live or on the replay, whether you're joining us on YouTube or you're joining us in the NLP Talks podcast community, please feel free to say hello in the comments and let us know that you are here. Now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome today's guest. Luke, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Laura. How are you? Yeah, I'm all good, thanks.
Good. So Luke, for the purpose of people that are watching the video version of this podcast, can I just get you to say a few lines about who you are and what you do, and then we're going to get going?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I'm Luke Wiltshire. I'm a learning development manager for a group of care homes. Been in my current job for 2.5 years. I'm a huge NLP fan now. Obviously, been on the course been on the practical course last November. And wanted to share some of the impact it's had on me.
Amazing. Cool. So, well, let's get going then. So, Luke, can I just get you to start by sharing with us, how did you find NLP? Like, how did it cross your path, and how did you end up coming and training with me?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. So obviously in the world of L&D and learning development, you see things on LinkedIn, social media sites, and I've got quite a curious brain, and I'm always up for learning, huge passion for learning. And I'd seen some things online, and I'd seen some, done some reading and got a book and and I thought, this is an area that I don't know too much about. Definitely something I was interested in. So, start Googling it, and who comes up? Laura's face, and unleash your potential. And yeah, I started my journey with you on January 2022. I think it was a 2-day diploma that I thought, you know what, I'll go along. It's only 2 days. If it's rubbish and it's no good, then I've only wasted 2 days, and it'll be absolutely fine. And then obviously it wasn't. So
Amazing. So and a lot of people do start with a 2-day diploma, whether they do the on-demand version, which obviously is available for people at the moment, or they come and do it live with me. That it is a good place to start. And when you started, looking at NLP, were you looking at it for you? Were you looking at it for your job? Were you looking at it for other people? Like, what was your main objective for studying it?
yes, yeah, it's a really good point, because actually I think my initial sort of attraction to it was for my work. It was, in my job I do a lot of public speaking, and I do a lot of facilitation, and knowing the bit about language I was quite interested about. So it definitely went with the first sort of it was more for work. It was more for, how can this help me at work? How can this help me help other people at work? So yeah, that was my first thought.
Yeah, and I can relate to that, because that was me as well. I
Yeah.
didn't go for me. I went for everyone else. I want to be a better leader, a better coach, a better HR professional, and all of that stuff. So you did the 2 days. You kind of went, actually, do you know what? I like Laura. I like NLP. So you decided to do your certified NLP practitioner course and your certified coach course. I know you're booked to do masters next year, but
Yeah.
in terms of the training you've done so far, I'm just wondering, like, if I'm guessing someone that might be listening to this might be in a similar place to where you and I were at the very beginning, which is like, do I do it? Do I not do it? Like, what might I get out of it? So I'm just curious for you, in terms of the prac course, I guess, particularly, what were some of the key takeaways for you? Did you have any kind of like light bulb moments and realizations and went, oh, actually, I thought I came for this, but actually I've come for something else and I didn't realize?
Absolutely, yeah. I had 2 notepads that I still have. They're absolutely battered, because I refer to them all the time. But yeah, I 100%. I went along to the prac course, knowing a little bit from the 2-day diploma. Obviously, all the pre-course work you have to do before the prac course, sort of still going into it very much like, this will help me be better at work. This will help me be better at managing my team or managing my people. And it was sort of apparent after probably the second day on the course that, yeah, do you know what, this is going to help people, but in order to help people, I need to help myself first. And light bulb moments, yes, absolutely loads, about, you know, what I tell myself, the things I tell myself, some of the limiting beliefs that I had about myself, which actually impacted my performance. So whilst I went for work and it's been transformational in my work, 100%, it's helped me as an individual person, which I wasn't prepared for, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah. And I was the same, and I think, as you and I both know, a lot of our students are exactly the same, which is I came to help other people, and actually I think you said to me that actually it helped me help me.
100%.
Which I think is quite interesting. So if you take yourself back to you as a learning and development professional before NLP, perhaps help us understand what are some of the differences that you've noticed in terms of how you used to do your job and how you now do it, having done this piece of professional and personal development.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest aspects of my job is delivering learning. So as well as, you know, I am a manager and I manage a team of people that do that, but I also deliver a lot of learning myself, especially leadership and management programs. I think one of the biggest impacts is before the prac course, people who have known me will always said he's a confident guy. But I think before the prac course, it was very much a show. You know, imposter syndrome, yeah, absolutely. I'd stand up in front of a room and underneath I'd be panicking, I'd be stressed, the stress on the journey to the course, the night's sleep before the course, panicking about it. Yeah, I'd probably go and do a good job. I probably did a good job, and people would say, you know what, he's good at what he does. But I don't think people realize the amount of stuff that was going on behind the scenes and all the stuff I was telling myself, and oh my god, I'm gonna be rubbish at this. This is gonna go awful. So I think the biggest change it's had is like the limiting belief stuff that we worked on myself in the course. One of my limiting beliefs was I'm not good enough to do this. I'm not qualified enough. I don't have as much experience as maybe some other people. Getting rid of those limiting beliefs has made me, you know, transform the way I deliver learning now. Like, you know, I would say people would say I'm confident, but now I feel really confident too. And therefore I think anything I do is 10 times better than it was previously.
And I think that's a really interesting one, because a lot of people can relate to that, right? It's like that old phrase, isn't it? Feel the fear and do it anyway. And I have a lot of empathy for that statement, because it helps a lot of people do stuff that they might otherwise not have done. But there is a big difference, particularly when your job involves being stood in front of big groups of people. There's a big difference, isn't there, when you present? If the internal dialogue, that voice in your head is going, I shouldn't be here. Why would they want to listen to me? Oh my God, I'm going to mess my words up. I'm going to forget what I need to say. And making yourself still perform, which is essentially where we are all at when we're fighting the internal dialogue and we're fighting our mindset, to perhaps putting you in the same scenario, the same audience, the same content, where that internal dialogue just isn't there. And you actually, I agree with you. I think it makes you a better trainer and a better developer of others, because you're not in here in your head going, I shouldn't be here, I can't do this, and more or less distracting yourself from the job at hand, isn't it? And then all of a sudden, when you know that you're confident, you know you've got something to offer, and that mindset has been flipped, that internal dialogue is different, I think you perform so much better. Not you personally, but us collectively perform so much better when actually our mindset is supporting us to do what we need to do, rather than us fighting our mindset, because it's exhausting, isn't it, when you're trying to do that?
I think exhausting is the word I'd use. So like, I'm a busy guy. I don't, you know, I've always been a busy guy. I like, outside of work, you know, I like to be 100 miles an hour. I've always been like that. But after a day of delivering training before the course, I was shattered, because I think it's that constant, like, you know, stood on a stage and then you'd walk off into the toilet and, oh my God, what am I doing next? What am I doing next? Oh my God, what's happening? What's happening? Whereas now I just go and embrace it. I just go. And at the end of the day, I feel really energized by it, not completely drained. So yeah, that's been a huge difference for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You mentioned a limiting belief that you had worked on the practitioner course, of I'm not good enough. I'm just curious because that's a really common one that a lot of us have to deal with, right? If we really want to get our mindset in a good place. So I'm just curious about, like, how did that manifest in terms of your job and what you were doing? So you used to have a belief of I'm not good enough, and now you believe you're absolutely or more than good enough. I'm sure. I'm not sure on your particular wording, but you've completely flipped that thing on its head. And standing in front of large groups, I mean, let's be honest, they say, don't they, the research, the number one fear in the UK or the Western world is a fear of public speaking. And then people like you and me do it for a living, and everybody else stands there and go, oh my God, I couldn't do what you do. And in your head, you're going, I couldn't do it either, but I do it. And that's when you're fighting your mindset. And then, of course, you sort your mindset out. So I'm just thinking, like, in terms of the fulfillment you get from your job and all of that stuff, like give us an idea of I'm not good enough. Like, what did that belief do in terms of screwing up your success? And then what's that like now when you're in front of, I don't know, a massive group of people?
So it's not just about the presentations as well. I'd say it's like, so even going into meetings at work, or I would say that I'm an ideas guy. Everyone that knows me will go, he comes up with ideas all the time. It's that sort of blue sky thinking ideas. But I think the difference I've previously, I would have had the ideas but not acted upon them, or I would have gone to a meeting and after the meeting gone, I really should have said this in the meeting. Why didn't I stand up? Why didn't I say what I actually think? Because there's this limiting belief underneath that's telling you don't say that, because you'll probably make a fool of yourself, or it might not be the right thing to say. And even down to things like LinkedIn and social media, like I would say on LinkedIn before the course, I was one of those LinkedIn people that just sort of in the background lurking and watching other people post and scared to say anything on LinkedIn in case someone takes it the wrong way. And in the industry that I work in, there's quite a lot of sort of like emotive posts that you see, and I know that I used to just sort of sit behind the scenes and not say much and not really have my voice, because underneath I'd probably always be thinking, I'm not sure who am I to say this, who am I'll probably get it wrong. Whereas now I think I go into meetings and I'll say something if I think it's the right thing to say. If I think I'm going to add impact, I'll be confident in how I say it. I won't sort of go around the houses and try and make a point, even if sometimes it's a bit more difficult. It's a difficult point to make. As long as I'm clear and I've got confidence in what I'm saying, I'll say it. I'll post on LinkedIn. I'll say things because I know that actually I've got value to add. I can do something, and other people might benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. I think there is that. I mean, whether we call it a fear of being judged, a fear of failing, or whatever. Yeah, I remember, obviously, I mean, I'm not in the corporate world anymore like you, but I remember going to some of those high profile meetings where you're dealing with, quite often some quite senior individuals in an organization where you're trying to influence an organizational agenda, or you're trying to influence something positive for the whole organization, because of course your role is right across the organization. That's quite different. Have you noticed a difference in terms of your relationships at work, those professional relationships, with some of the people that your role naturally requires you to interact with?
Absolutely. I think the world of L&D is very much about relationships and stakeholder relationships, internally, externally, with people inside the business and with people that we engage with outside of the business. I think the biggest difference I've noticed is that I'm quite a quick guy, and I think in previous jobs I have gone into places and wanted to act too quickly and not thought about the relationship aspect of how to achieve change. I think where I am now, I've really worked hard for sort of 2 years to build good relationships, build rapport with people, create that relationship before you then go in and try and drive some change. And again, with my external sort of suppliers that I engage with, again, for me, relationships are key. Even this week, I was meeting face to face with one of my key external stakeholders. And I don't think I would have done that before the course. I would have hidden behind an email. I would have, or I would have just sort of not seen the importance of relationships in what I do. But now I think I get that, in order to drive change, I can't do it all myself. What can I control? What can I influence? What do I have real control over? And the only person I have real control over is me.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, absolutely.
So, and I think that's an interesting one. I remember when I did an L&D manager role, and you're right. You want to be able to wave your magic wand. You want to be able to magic up budget. You want to be able to magic up different behaviours in the organisation. You want to be able to influence that. And it does take a different approach. I'm just wondering, like, in terms of your facilitation skills, because obviously, you're dealing with, I'm guessing middle and senior managers in organizations when you're doing leadership training. I'm wondering, has it had an impact, your new knowledge from NLP? Has that had an impact in how you design training and how you facilitate learning? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I take design first, design 100%. So I think the world of L&D, especially when we start looking at leadership management training, it's very process heavy. Okay, let's teach someone how to do a disciplinary. Let's teach someone how to do a supervision. Let's teach someone a performance management process. And I don't know how many times I've stood in front of a classroom of people and delivered the same message and then thinking about, why aren't they doing it? Why aren't they doing it? Like, they've had the training, that famous saying, well, they've had the training. Why aren't they doing it? And it's frustrating because you're investing in people, you're putting people into a nice venue, and you're, taking them away from their day job, and you're investing in them, and what you're doing is good, but it's process training. It's not behavior. So in terms of design, where I am now, I've got great sort of autonomy in my role, and my organization trust what I do, and very supportive of what I do. And therefore I've said, can we try something different with leadership management? Can we not do what we've always done? Can we try something different? And they've gone, yeah, go for it, Luke. So we've done, our leadership training is much more about behavior, much more about, like, why isn't someone doing a difficult conversation? We can teach you the theory about having a difficult conversation. Of course we can. But if you've got something deep down about your beliefs that you don't think you're going to be able to have that conversation, or what people are going to judge you, then of course they're never going to do it. Of course they're never going to do it. And, me and my team that we work with, we are now doing a lot around values, beliefs, what people would have called the soft skills before. But for me, like, all the people that I work with are very clever, intelligent people. They can follow a process. Processes are easy. It's a piece of paper, follow a process, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you do 6. It's now about, like, actually the people skills, how to build rapport, how to create connections, thinking about your language that you're using, as well as then tackling some of the belief stuff on a one-to-one basis with people. And the results I'm getting people message me after each course, people wanting to stay around, the feedback that we get in between. I was sort of explaining earlier that on a course recently, I've had someone actually send me a picture of their new notice board at work with a picture about saying, be more salmon, because it's all very much about cause and effect and taking more control over themselves. So it's just, I cannot say how much difference it's made when you try and train people on the behavior stuff rather than the process.
Yeah.
And I've always known it.
Go on.
I've always known it. I was going to say, I've always known that you can teach people process all you want, but you need to teach them the behavior. But I think now that I've got rid of that limiting belief, now that I'm more confident in myself, I know, actually, let's do it. Let's do this course. Let's not just do it all the way we've always done it. Let's do something different.
Well, it's like I was saying, isn't it? If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And if you want behavioural change in an organisation, which is what most organisations want, and I just think you captured in those few moments my absolute frustration when I was doing an L&D role, where you're quite right. You said, but they've had the training. I don't know what else to do to help them. I've taught them the processes. They've had the training. We've done the case studies. We've done the role plays. We've done all of that. and yet they're still not doing it. And mindset is what often trips us up, isn't it? We just don't realize that's what trips us up, because it's in that moment where someone needs to make a decision to act. I mean, take difficult conversations, as you've just said. We as a leader in an organization, you can see there are conversations that need to be happening and they're not happening, and it's the curiosity, isn't it, that you then have about, so what stops that person having that conversation? What else is it that they need to believe or understand about themselves that would empower them to have that conversation? If we could just help more people in the corporate world have the courage to do that. And it's not a criticism. I mean, listen, we've all been there. I've been there, but you're absolutely right. I think it's such a more enlightened learning experience if you can actually get beyond the obvious stuff.
Yeah. And initially when we first started it, you could see people in the room going like, what's this? This is not what we normally do. Why aren't we doing what we normally do? Why aren't I sitting on this course that I've probably sat on 10 times before and it's never actually changed my results? And then all of a sudden, me and my colleague that are delivering it are like going into some different things, and it's silent to start with. And then you can see people like, oh, I get it. Like they get their light bulb moment too. So yeah, it's been huge.
Oh, massive. Now, in terms of the language stuff, we're gonna come back to the salmon thing, because you're gonna need to explain that.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm gonna write it on my piece of paper, because otherwise our listeners are gonna go, salmon, what's that all about? But in terms of the learning that you're describing, that you have enhanced and redesigned and really lifted up from the level that the delivery was to the level of the delivery now, and the behavioral change that's driving in your organization. Just tell me a little bit about maybe a couple of examples of how that's worked, because I know you don't actually call it NLP, and I think that's going to be a little bit, because I know you, me, and loads of our students are, yeah, but Laura, I don't want to call it NLP because that's going to put a barrier in the way. I just want to help people. So I'm just curious, as an experienced learning and development professional, like, how have you got over that hurdle with building in some of the concepts you've learned from the training with me, and maybe explain how you've done that, and then maybe give us like an example of how you've done that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, like, if you take something like difficult conversations, right? How many times will you have seen in your experience, Laura, like in the corporate world, the training will be called dealing with difficult conversations, or how to have challenging conversations, or feedback, or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sick of hearing it.
And then people are coming to the training with a preconceived idea. Oh, here we go again, we're going to learn this model, the sandwich model of feedback, or the EE. They're going to hear all these different models, and we're probably going to do some role play, and we're going to do this. So we made a real conscious effort with language and what we call the training. So, for example, our difficult conversations workshop is not called dealing with difficult conversations, it's called communicating with confidence.
Amazing. Oh my goodness, focus on what you want.
So people are coming to the course with what is this about them? Because and then actually we're talking about difficult conversations, we're talking about feedback, but that, if I'm being honest, that's 5% of the day. What we actually spend a lot of the time doing in the room is getting people talking, getting people to open up how they feel about difficult conversations. We start then going into some of the neuro stuff about the unconscious mind and how it doesn't process negatives. But I never put on the slide, this is NLP. I just talk and show visual imagery to back up what we're saying. We do a lot of stuff around the iceberg model, pathways, and people do what they've always done. And at no point do I say, this is an NLP technique, this is an NLP slide. It's very much just natural. And then we finish the day with, okay, let's put it into some practice. Let's look at some models, because we do need to do that in the world of work. We do need to give you a structure and a format to do it. But knowing that we've tackled the sort of confidence bit first means that the role plays and the scenario parts of the training are just brilliant to watch. And because as a facilitator, you've built that rapport with the group. So you asked about facilitation actually earlier, and one of the biggest differences I've made in my facilitation is I sit down when I train. And just something as simple as that, because all the learners are sitting down, then actually I feel so much more able to challenge in the classroom. So, oh, let's stop you there. I'm going to stop you there. That's not quite right. Let's try and do that again. I would never have done that before. I would have just gone, oh, well, yeah, you did okay. You did well. Whereas now I feel like we're getting real gritty learning, and people feel safe to try things, practice things, and push themselves out of their comfort zone. So yeah, so language, we've reframed the course titles and make it more about that. So that's one example of how we've sort of tried to embed some of the NLP stuff without calling it NLP.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I always say to people, I've got absolutely no issue with that. In fact, I think one of the skills of a great NLP professional, or should I say a professional who uses NLP, is actually about how you make this stuff accessible. A lot of people come to NLP because of all the snazzy techniques, right? We can get rid of phobias in 15 minutes and change your belief in 12 minutes and all of that stuff. But actually what makes some of the biggest difference is some of the language stuff that we do.
Absolutely.
And that's just language. You don't need to stick any label on it. You just need to share the knowledge, and you need to share the wisdom that you've learned, so that it can help help other people. And I know, you manage a team of, I think, 8 or so people. And I know that's something that you've been really big on. I know you've told me before about, actually, there are too many people out there that slap a label of NLP on it, and that becomes a barrier to people's learning.
Yeah.
Why would you put a barrier in the way when actually you're focused on a learning outcome? Let's just get the outcome. But also, a lot of people have knowledge, and this isn't just NLP, but people go on courses, don't they? And they go, I've got this extra piece of knowledge now, and I'm not going to share it because it's going to be my little secret power. And I know you did the complete opposite with your team. Do you want to share a bit about that?
Yeah, well, I would say, like, I'm a results-driven person, so I'm motivated by results. So that's why I think the NLP toolkit works for me, because it's very much about results. So yeah, I absolutely believe in sharing knowledge. I wouldn't dream of going on a course and then keeping it all to myself. It's my little magic thing that I'm not going to share with anybody. So even down to something like metaphors. So a process that I learned a lot about on the course, and how to tell good stories and how to use metaphors. I've done a workshop with my team on how to use that in the classroom, and we use it now. Like, even down to we use one little metaphor about the dance floor, and all of our team talk about the dance floor now, because you know what it's like, Laura, when you're delivering training to a group of people, you're always going to get 2 or 3 people that take over and are more vocal in the training session. So now at the start of every training session, we talk about the dance floor. And when you go to a wedding, are you the sort of person that is on the dance floor from the minute it's open to the minute it finishes, or are you the sort of person that sits on the outside and never joins in? Well, in this training session, if you're the person that's always on the dance floor, maybe take a step off, let other people get on the dance floor. If you're that person who sits on the side, maybe join in. If not, I'm going to drag you in. And even even those little things, without saying, what you're saying is, guys, can the really overpowering people please shut up a little bit? And can the quiet people please join in a little bit? But you're saying it in a different way, and you get a different result. So we do, I've shared those sorts of techniques with my training team. And it's made a huge difference to the outcome that they're receiving.
Yeah. But you're right, isn't it? It's like, I always say to people, my goal is never to carbon copy me. Like, I don't know, I have a unique style, I have a unique way of doing it, but I have knowledge, and I apply that knowledge in the way that works best for my personality, for my approach, for what it is I'm looking to achieve. And I would always want all our students to do exactly the same, just like you said, which is, then I've imparted knowledge with you, and you're now a leader of a group of 8 people and a professional, in charge of the L&D activities of a large organization, and actually you take that knowledge and then you go, okay, so how is this relevant to me? How can this be of use to my team? What can I share, and how do I share it with my team so that they can apply it? So then you get organizational benefit from knowledge that you've had. It just breaks my heart when people go on any kind of course and come back and then they don't share what they've learned, because that's how you get organizational change, isn't it? You've got a team of 8 trainers now, all of whom, and I know there's loads of examples, but just with that one example of metaphors and using metaphors within training, all of a sudden, as a team, you're impacting 2,500 colleagues in a completely different way and getting better outcomes. I mean, that just excites me so much.
Yeah, and it doesn't always, like you said, it doesn't always have to be the fancy, shiny techniques. It can just be some of the, one of the biggest things from the prac course was the satir categories and using your body language a little bit more as a facilitator and sharing some of those techniques with my team. I was actually delivering training with one of my colleagues a couple of weeks ago, and the group were so engaged in the activity that we couldn't get them back. We couldn't get them back to the focus on what we needed them to. So I just sort of whispered to him, remember, just put your finger in the air, just point up to the air and see what happens. And he did it and matched his tone with what he was trying to say. And he did it, and they literally stopped in mid activity. He looked at me with sort of a funny look to sort of go, what have I just done there? And I was like, there we go. Like, so sometimes just having that, as the leader of the team, giving them that confidence to try these things. And you know what? If it doesn't work, no one's died. No one's, you just try it and see what happens. And now I know that person uses that technique all the time in training. So
amazing. And that's what fills me up as an NLP trainer, when I know I've imparted knowledge to you, you've imparted that to one of your team, and now they're using it to positively impact the learning outcomes of the people that they work with. And that's to me is what lights me up with that ripple effect. That is my mission, to make that difference. Now, oh my God, there's just so many things I want to ask you about. Okay, so before we go on to the next bit, right, let's just go back a little bit. You mentioned the salmon. Okay.
Oh, yes, the salmon.
And so let's make sure that we cover that off, because listeners of this podcast will be like, oi, you two, you mentioned this salmon thing. What on earth are you talking about? This is not a fishing podcast. This is an NLP podcast.
Yeah.
So, Luke, could you just, for the benefit of everybody, share what you were referring to about the salmon?
Of course. So it was actually at the start of this conversation, you said about what did you learn from the prac course? And one of the biggest things I took away about myself was cause-effect thinking. And I know that's one of the themes of NLP, and it's a big thing. And so actually, how do you translate that to an audience? How do you share that knowledge with other people without going into cause effect and explaining, so actually it's trying to make it, and my team know that my buzzword is relatable. Let's make it relatable to the audience that we're talking to so that they get what we're saying. So I think it was you, Laura. I think I nicked it from you. So, but you in the training room talking about,
and I probably followed it from someone else.
That's L&D, right? If you take the concept of a jellyfish is something that bobs along the ocean, is very much at the effect of other things, the current and where it ends up. And the flip side of that is, if you look at a salmon, it swims upstream, it tackles a current to get where it wants to go. So even in like the communication workshop that we deliver in my organization, I show a slide with a picture of a jellyfish and a picture of a salmon, and we talk about, when we're communicating, whose responsibility is it? Is it yours? Is it 50-50? Is it you as the talker and 50% as the listener? And most of the time they go, yeah. If they don't listen, what am I meant to do? And only recently I was challenging someone to say, well, they should know this, they should know that. And I tell them this every day and they don't do it. And I'm like, okay, so jellyfish or salmon? And she was like looking at me, and I was like, jellyfish or salmon? And she sort of looked at me and she went, I guess I'm just blaming other people, aren't I? I'm not taking responsibility for it. And actually, like I was sharing it with you, Laura, that I've been out this week on lots of different things, and I got an email from this learner with a picture of a salmon on her notice board in her workspace, and underneath it just said, be more salmon, take more responsibility for what I do. And I just think, do you know what? Sometimes an image, a metaphor, like people remember that stuff. It sticks. So if they didn't learn anything else from that course, but she took away that, I'm happy.
Yeah. No, exactly. And are there other ways of explaining the NLP concept of cause effect? Of course there are. But if you had just told her the theory of it, I agree with you. She wouldn't have remembered it. It's
Mm.
those metaphors that I always talk about, making information sticky. And it's those metaphors that makes the information that you're imparting sticky, as in it sticks more. They remember it more. And if they've got it and it's stuck, that's what's going to impact their behavior, and that's going to so yeah, the jellyfish and the salmon I cannot claim as my own. I borrowed it from someone else, but I always share it because
Yeah.
I just think it's such a great metaphor for helping people understand the cause effect equation, and also for taking that responsibility, because it's true. You know, I mean, I live 10 minutes from the beach. I know you're not far from the beach either, and you know, and sometimes that beach is full of jellyfish and you think, oh my God, how have they all ended up here? You know, well, because circumstances blown them there, because you know, jellyfish don't actually have a purpose. They just bob in the sea and they end up where they end up, you know. And I remember saying to a client once, so I was doing some one-to-one coaching, and I said, you know what, one day you'll realize that if you carry on the way you're going, you're gonna wake up one day and you're gonna be that jellyfish that landed at the North Pole. And then you'll wake up one day and go, how did I end up here?
Yeah.
And that's, and a lot of us have at different points in our life have those what I call waking up moments, and you think, how did I end up here? You know, and then all of a sudden you realize it's because you let circumstance blow you, because you just went, and a lot of people kid themselves, right? Because they kind of go, oh, well, I'm just staying open to opportunities, and you know, and all of that stuff, and they got no direction, they got no plan, and you know, no goal for what they want to do with their life, and then they get disappointed and frustrated because they've ended up metaphorically as the jellyfish at the North Pole, going, well, what the hell am I doing here?
I giggled when you said, I was giggling when you said I'm open to opportunities, and that because before the prac course, that was me 100%. You know, like I would say I was very effect side thinking. It was everybody else's fault why things weren't happening, and like now it's just, you know what, if I want change, if I want to achieve something, it's me. I'm control me. I'll be it cause more. And that was, you know, you mentioned light bulb moments. 100%, that was my light bulb moment from the prac course.
No, and I think it was for me too. You know, it's like, you know, you kind of sit there, don't you, and you just think, oh well, you know, I'll just see what you know, take jobs for example. You know, I'm just going to sit there, I'm just going to wait for a recruiter to approach me. I'm not going to actually put my hat in the ring. And then you sit there, go, why am I miserable in my job? You know, well, that's because if you're going to sit there, you know, I mean, like, use your great analogy of the dance floor. If you're just going to sit there on the edge of the dance floor and you're not actually going to get up and do anything about it, then you might end up having a miserable evening at the wedding. Or do you want to get up and actually have some conversations, or have a little boogie, or whatever, you know? And I just think metaphors are so good in so many areas of our lives.
And you know what I think it does is it make it differences, like that personal thing, especially in a training room or in a classroom. Like people can then acknowledge something themselves. So a learner actually said at one point during the course, oh, I think I've been on the dance floor too much, let me step off. Like rather than me having to tell that person, can you you know, you've said enough now, can we move on to someone else? She sort of realized it herself because of a metaphor. It wasn't someone telling her. She was at more cause herself. I'm probably saying too much now, I'll step away.
Yeah, amazing. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh my God, like all these, I've still got all these things I want to ask you, Luke, and I'm looking at the time. This happens on every podcast episode because I just like get embroiled in all of this stuff. So I just want to go back, if I can, to talk about techniques, because I think a lot of people think NLP is just about the techniques. And I know today we've managed with nearly 40 minutes of a podcast here, and we haven't even talked about a single technique. You know, and I know that you have taken concepts and you've taken thinking and knowledge and, you know, really up leveled a lot of the training that you're delivering. But I think a lot of people think, oh, well, I won't do an NLP course because I just couldn't do those techniques at work. Like I wouldn't feel comfortable doing a fast phobia at work, or I wouldn't feel comfortable doing a parts integration at work, you know, and like and therefore I won't do NLP because I don't think it can help me at work. What would you say to that type of person, having got the other side of that?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's, you know, perfectly reasonable, because I think techniques in the workplace, you know, that we have to be realistic on. There is a line on what you can and what you can't do depending on your organizational culture and behaviors. So yeah, I would say, if I'm being completely honest, I felt a bit like that, but actually with a growth mindset and a bit more cause, it was like, what can I take? What bits can I use? And there are definitely techniques and parts of techniques that I use in my job. So for example, like the circle of confidence and working on something like that. So I've worked with someone in the workplace who has struggled and always doesn't perform very well at interviews. And I was in one of the services that I work in a couple of months ago, and this person said to me, "Oh, Luke, I've got this interview tomorrow, but I'll probably muck it up because I always do. You know, I'm not going to get it because I always do." And then immediately the light bulb in me goes, right, I can see technique here could be used, and it doesn't always have to be. Like, I think sometimes people get bogged down in it always has to be this really formal process, and you have to sit down with someone, and you have to. In the world of work, you can't do that. You can't create a contract with someone and do a discovery call because you're in a workplace. It just doesn't happen. So in that moment, I was like, right, have you got 10 minutes? Yeah. Should we go and have a chat over a coffee? Let's go and have a chat over a coffee. Start giving some sort of like pre-frame about language and about programming, and then how if you're going into an interview thinking you're going to fail, you probably will. So talking to that person like that, and then opening up their mind to, okay, I'm curious, I want to get this job tomorrow. And then in 10 minutes did a circle of confidence with her. 2 days later, she went and had the interview, smashed it, got the job.
Yes.
So it's a technique that you've used, but really it was 15 minutes.
Yeah. And how long do we spend just chatting to people in that kind of scenario? Whereas actually you could have a purposeful chat, let's call it that, that actually helps shape their thinking and helps them think, actually, maybe I do need to do something different ahead of tomorrow. And then you spend 10 minutes just teaching her a little technique like the circle of confidence. I mean, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. Right. Listen, I'm conscious I could talk to you all day about how you use it at work, and you are a role model. You really are, in terms of taking content that I've shared with you and that we share on our certified courses, and, as you say, making it relatable and making such a difference. And honestly, I could talk to you for hours about how you've done that. However, I want to talk about volleyball.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will not be aware, because obviously perhaps they don't know you, but actually, although you are a very experienced, competent learning and development professional in your day job, you actually have a massive passion for volleyball, and you are a volleyball coach.
Yep.
Which you do in your spare time. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I know you've been doing it a long time, but I'm just wondering, like, in terms of sports and sports coaching and what you do with volleyball, like, give us a bit of an insight into the difference it's made to you as a volleyball coach, because I think this could be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, NLP in sport is huge. And as whatever sport you do, whether that be football, hockey, golf is a huge one. I think we could talk about golf another time, because in golf you are on your own for 4 hours, just you and your brain. And there's you can see a lot of potential for some of the mindset stuff in the sport of golf. But yeah, from a volleyball perspective, I think as a coach, one of the most frustrating things when you coach a sport, whatever sport that may be, is when you can see someone with natural talent for the sport, technical talent, I would call it. So brilliant at what they do, yet they get put into a game and they crumble, and they completely crumble. And you're like, this is not the same person who at training is performing, amazingly. You put them in a match, and who is this person? Like, where's that person gone from Wednesday to Sunday? Where's that person gone? Why aren't they doing what they do at training on Wednesdays? And I think from my experience as a coach, is that's what I always used to get so frustrated about, because I think I spent a lot of my time doing what I would call technical coaching, how to do this move, how to do this technique, and people could do it, but actually when it comes to a game and when they have to perform, they couldn't do it. And they were getting frustrated. I was getting frustrated. And volleyball actually used to, as much as it is a huge passion for me, volleyball actually used to cause me a lot of stress and frustration, because I was like, why aren't I getting results? Why are they so good at training but not good in a match? So actually the NLP stuff, I had no sort of thoughts about going into NLP and using it for volleyball. I thought it was going to be for work and it was going to be for work only. But actually, in volleyball, it has made such a difference. And again, without using any sort of big, shiny techniques, it's some of the really basic things like focusing on what we want. So at the start of the season, I sit down with my players now and we talk about the goal. What is it we're going to achieve this year? I've never done that before. I might have had it up here, but never sort of told anybody what that goal was, and then wondered why people weren't performing to that goal because I never shared it with people.
It's so obvious when you say it like that, but it's so true. We have it all in our head and we forget to share it with our team. And so obvious when you say it like that, but and day to day it's not.
And I think once I got rid of that limiting belief about myself, then this season that's just started, I was like, do you know what? I'm going to do a Zoom call for my team, and I'm going to do we're going to do a presentation about how the season's going to go and the goal that we're all working towards. I wouldn't have never have done that before NLP. I would have maybe thought of doing it, but never actually followed through and done it, because I would have thought, oh, they'll think I'm a bit weird, or they'll think I've lost the plot a little bit. Whereas now I'm just like, let's just do it. Let's just get on and do it and see what happens. And you don't realize, I think, and it's not just sport, it's in the world of work. When you're in a position of a coach or a leader, what you say has huge impact on people. And I've never really realized that until NLP. And like now I hear some of my players coming out with some little phrases that I've said, and I'm like, they are listening, they get it. And the difference is made, I've worked with some players on a one-to-one basis, but I've also worked as a team. So little things like reframing your language more positively. So I would have shouted. I was a shouter before, and I would shout, "Stop doing that! Stop doing that!" Now I'm like, well, why would I say that? Just focus on what I want, guys. Let's do this. Let's start doing this. Let's do more of this. And they're looking at me, and you get a result.
Yeah. But it's again, because we're trained in NLP, we can hear that difference. I'm just going to very briefly explain this for the purpose of the listeners that are listening. So we know from our language training in NLP that the unconscious mind can't process negatives. And when you are wanting to improve your language, and this is one of the best language tips I can give anybody, and every listener on this podcast can start this right now, is rather than telling people what you don't want them to do, tell them what you do want them to do. So if we take a small child, for example, if you say to a small child, don't run across the road, what are they going to do? They're going to run across the road because you've just told them what you don't want to do. When you overlay that with the unconscious mind not being able to process negations, that's the technical term, but basically a not is a negation. The unconscious mind can't process it. So when you say don't run across the road, what the mind actually hears is run across the road, or do run across the road. And so not only is it like a double whammy, because you're telling them what you don't want them to do, and you're sticking in a negation, which means that they hear the complete opposite. So I would say to people, if you take the small child example, when you're walking down the street with a child and you want them to stay with you, rather than saying, don't run across the road, say to them, stay here with me, tell them what you want them to do. So in language terms, it's called positive directionalized language. Again, let's not get too hung up on that. But it's what you want to do. So your example, Luke, is just a perfect live example where you've, rather than saying to people, stop that, don't do that, stop that, don't do that anymore, you're now saying, okay, so let's do this and let's try this. And it's just transformational, isn't it, when you change your language as a coach?
Yeah. And I find now that I'm not shouting. I'm not frustrated. I'm not angry. I get home after volleyball energized because I feel like people have, the performance is different. People's mindset's different. It's even like you said, it's down to something simple. When you walk through the sports hall, I used to say to people, guys, I'm getting really annoyed that the net is not up now. Whereas I now tell people, guys, the net has to be up by 8:35.
Yeah.
And what happens? The net's up by 8:35 because you're telling people what you want, not what you don't want. And it's so simple, but if you don't know, you don't know what you don't know, right? So
yeah, absolutely. I'm just curious in terms of feedback, because obviously as a coach, I'm sure you have to give individual players feedback in terms of what you liked and what you want them to focus on. I'm wondering, has your NLP training influenced how you give different players feedback now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, before NLP, my style was, this is my style, this is how I do things. Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
if you don't like it, well, that's tough, because this is my coaching style, and this is how it's going to be. Whereas now I've got much more an awareness of, people have got different, people's perceptions are different, and people have got different sort of like rep systems, we call them in NLP, right? So
yeah.
visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and you sort of auditory, digital, and you really start to like understand that. So I've got players in my team who are very visual, what I'd call visual people, and you can pick that out by what they text you or what they say. You can hear it, you can see it. So now I make sure, if I need to give them feedback, I'll take a video of them doing something and I'll send it to them afterwards, and they reply back, "Oh, I can see that, Luke. I can see what you mean now." And you're like, got it. Okay. But I've definitely got people that are auditory. So after a match, I'll just voice note them on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
It's something as simple as that. I'll just voice them. Just want to let you know, I think you did a really good job today. I know we didn't get the win, but you did really well. I want you to work on your blocking for next week, and just giving them that auditory thing. And I normally get back a message that says something like, "Sounds great," and it's
Amazing.
like, and I think that's a huge thing, isn't it? It's about adapting to who you're trying to give feedback to, and the results that you then get are so different.
Yeah, no, and it is, and those again, people listening to the podcast. So representational systems is something that we teach on the practitioner course, and understanding that everybody has a preference to how they process information. And as Lucas just said, different people have different preferences. But if you can actually start to give people feedback in their preference, all of a sudden it starts to land better. And you don't have to, a lot of people that NLP train go, "Oh, but you can't use rep systems unless you use the rep test." No, you just listen for what we call in NLP predicates, which again is something you'll learn if you've done the NLP practitioner course. And essentially predicates is just the word we use for the cluster of words that belong to each rep system. So I can hear what you're saying. Here is an auditory predicate, belongs to the auditory system. So what Luke has brilliantly explained there for you is how he's using rep systems live in action to better deliver the feedback to the players. I'm just wondering, Luke, I know we're running out of time really fast here, but I'm just wondering, like, if you look at the results that your volleyball team were getting before you trained in NLP, and the results for your volleyball team and club now, what are some of the differences that you can see in terms of results,
Yeah.
pure results, and the difference that has made?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in terms of like results, the season's not long started. We've played 4 matches. We've won 3 out of 4, which is already better than sort of how we did last year. So
Okay, whoa. I think there's a lot of coaches out there to listen to this podcast that go a success rate of 3 out of 4 matches. I mean, I'll take that all day, every day.
yeah, and I think the big thing to note is that the team is completely new. So I've sort of like got a whole group of new people, and in sport, and not just volleyball, in any sport, it can sometimes take a long time for a team of people, and in the workplace, right, to gel
Yeah.
and start to get to know each other and trust. But having understanding of people, so there's been some real key things, like I've introduced that we do a pre-season social where we get them together, we get them all talking and chatting, we go out for a drink, and that has a huge impact on them trusting each other. Then we can start challenging each other more, building rapport with each other. So yeah, we've won 3 matches out of 4 to start with, but it's not necessarily always about those like what I would call like obvious wins. Yeah, like 3 out of 4 is great, but what I've noticed is the buzz, the vibe, the atmosphere is completely different. We've got a squad of sort of 18 players, which is unheard of. Most teams that we play struggle to get 6 or 7. People are committed to it. People turn up to training each week. We've actually taken players from other clubs that have wanted to come and play for us because they've heard that we've got a bit of a buzz, and you seem to be onto something here, and there's a real good energy. And actually, one of my players last week said, like, "This is the most fun I've had playing the sport that I love." And actually, like, it's not really the win is important, of course it is, but it's how much I'm enjoying something as well. So for me, that's a huge win.
Amazing. Oh my, what a difference!
Mm.
And I'm like I say, honestly, I could talk to you for hours, because you're so good at taking what is quite sometimes technical in NLP, and just like really understanding it. And I think that's the thing that I think you and a lot of our other students are great at, which is, you know, as you know, I'm not a certificate factory NLP trainer, right? I'm not interested in just churning out bits of paper and going, oh, there, you're an NLP practitioner, right, off you go. Like, I want people to leave my training room genuinely understanding these concepts, because if you can understand the concepts, then you can make them relatable and you can actually use them. What is the point? And I get so irate about it, but what is the point of having a piece of paper if you can't use the stuff that you've learned? What is the point?
I was going to just jump in, Laura, and say, like, if I don't think I've ever told you this, but before coming to train with you, I tried to do some online course. Okay, like I tried to do some sort of qualification in something, and I was just like, I'm, you know, I do like a theory, but I like to understand how you actually use it. So, and when I then came to that 2-day diploma with you, I was like, I'm onto something here, because it's practical, it's relatable, and you explain it in a way that makes sense. And I think, you know, that I work in the world of L&D. There are people out there, when we talk about NLP in the L&D space, in my forums that I belong to, it's Marmite. Some people love it, some people don't. And I think it's because there are some training providers out there that don't teach you how to actually apply it.
Yeah.
You know, they don't actually teach you how to do it. And you invest in yourself, and you go on a course, and then you come away and you don't actually achieve anything. Like, that is the beauty of training with you, is you make it relatable, you make it make sense.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, because as you know, I'm just so passionate about making a difference with it, and there is such inconsistency in the standards that are out there. You know, like this morning I was on a group coaching call. So after our NLP practitioner courses, now we have a group coaching call 1 month after the course is finished. So I was having the catch up this morning before we come here to record this with one of those, and one of those guys, bearing in mind they're at the start of their professional journey, so they've just done the NLP practitioner course, they haven't done coach, they haven't done masters, and they go, so and one of them turned around and said, you know what, he said, I was having a conversation with someone that said to me that they were a master practitioner of NLP, and he said, and I could see right through what they were saying. They did not understand NLP at all, because he said I could run rings around them in terms of my knowledge, and he said, and I did, and I started unpicking what they were saying. They're like, yeah, actually, but no, have you thought about it like this? And he was, you know, and he was like, it just makes me realize how well trained I've been. And it's a big bugbear of mine, the inconsistency in standards across this industry. And I will keep championing quality NLP training because I believe in it. But, you know, there are some people out there that, and I feel sorry for the individuals, because they've been sold something that, you know, you don't know that a trainer is a good trainer. And you and I know this with our L&D background. You don't know a good trainer is a good trainer until you sit in front of them.
Yeah.
You know, and it's always great to get that positive feedback. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Now, I'm conscious we've run out of time, and there are things that are on my page here that I haven't even got to ask you. But Luke, I just want to say thank you so much for giving me your time this morning and joining me here on the podcast, because what you've so brilliantly done is explained for people, how it can be used in learning and development, but also how you've taken the concepts and made them relatable and actually are making a difference in an organization. Yes, I love helping coaches, and yes, I love helping people set up coaching businesses, but I also love helping professionals in business, because you can have such a positive impact on 2,500 lives, you know, in terms of you taking that knowledge and you taking that back and doing that. So thank you for sharing all of that with us, because I know a lot of people are going to get a lot of value out of this podcast. Now, as you may or may not know, we finish off the podcast with a quick fire question round, and everybody always gets nervous at this point, because they're like, oh my God. And I when I recorded the podcast the other day, people often say, but Laura, you do prep them, don't you? No, I really don't. Luke has absolutely no idea what I'm about to ask him.
No.
And so I'm going to ask a few quick fire questions so we can get to know Luke a little bit better. So Luke, you ready?
Go for it.
Okay, so if you could go back and give your younger self some advice, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, what would you tell them?
Oh, that is a tricky one. I would say believe in yourself more.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Go for it. I love it.
Mm,
I love it.
mm.
If you could have dinner with any famous person, who would you have dinner with?
Oh, you really didn't prep me for these at all. Do you know what? Someone like probably Barack Obama.
Oh my God, yes. I'd love to pick his brains.
And now that he's out of the world of politics, so to speak, I think you'd get unfiltered Barack Obama. So yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah. Oh my God, that would be a brilliant one. That would be a brilliant one. And more sensibly, looks like don't ask me too many of those. More sensibly, if someone was listening to this podcast, so say they're an L&D professional, a bit like you were before you came to train with me, sat on the fence thinking to themselves, do I do it? Do I go and do this NLP thing? Do I not? What would you say to them?
Yeah, you know what I'm going to say. You need to go and do it. For me, there's a few things. Yes, you're going to learn a lot of theory. Yes, you're going to learn, but you're also going to learn a lot about yourself. You're going to have those light bulb moments and really transform you as an individual, which will then impact you in the organization that you work for. And the other thing, it's even down to the training is face to face. I know you do virtual and you have different options, but for me as a learner, I enjoy being in a room with people, and you learn from other people. You get to chat to other people during the breaks, and just investing in yourself. Like, when was the last time in the world of L&D, we're often the last people to get development ourselves. And when was the last time I got any learning and development and, switched off my laptop for the course and went and stayed? And, I'm not from Cardiff where you delivered the course. And I got to have some time to myself and really, really sort of like get in your own head and start to get out of your own way to get the results you want to do. So yeah, no, absolutely. If you're thinking about doing it, stop thinking about doing it, do it.
I love it. Amazing. Again, Luke, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate all of your pearls of wisdom today, and I appreciate you giving me your time. So thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. For those of you that are listening, thank you for listening. I really appreciate everybody around the globe that listens to our podcast. I hope you found it hugely valuable. If you would like to find out more about our certified NLP courses, whether you are planning to come and join me in person, or if you're interested in learning virtually through Zoom or whatever medium that we use, then please do go on over to our website, unleashyourpotential.org.uk, and you'll find all the information about all the courses that we offer. And I would be delighted to help you, as I helped Luke, to take this toolkit and really make a difference in terms of your career and with your life. So take care, everybody. Until next time.